coming up.
I just feel like that's so important, just to be who you are as an artist and stay true to yourself, and don't let the noise of social media and comparison like take away from your trajectory. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't let trendy sounds be the things that changes you if that's not actually what you enjoy making. And ownership, I feel like too quickly artists are, even if they do well, they too quickly give away things. I think take your time with it, like really make a plan, like own as much as your content as possible.
Today with me on the Black Gold podcast, I have Teon Gibbs, and he is a rapper originally from Botswana who moved to Vancouver, Canada, and he has now become a full-fledged artist in the rap industry, and he just got off of tour, and he has taken the time to sit down with us and discuss his art and his craft, and also his new venture in his own record called 100 Collective. And Teon, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So in terms of becoming a rapper, like what would you say are some of the things that people would usually overlook in terms of the effort and the work required to get to the stage where you are right now?
I think it's some things that people really overlook as far as like developing their career in the artist world is the amount of consistency and the amount of mental fortitude like you need to have. Like I really believe, like, since becoming an artist, like I've gone through every emotion you could probably think of. I've been depressed. I've thought I wasn't good enough. I thought this wasn't going to happen for me. I had jealousy. I compared myself to a lot of other people, but also had moments of like extreme joy. But it's just the amount of mental fortitude and strength you need to have to keep yourself balanced and thinking that, it's going to work out is so, so important. It's so overlooked. And I think, just like your mental stability and keeping good people around you and staying away from like, the vices that can tear you down. It's just something that people don't talk about, but it needs to be like really, really like at the forefront of your mind.
And so in terms of like keeping consistent, keeping disciplined, that must have started off at whenever you were like, in terms of having that whole range of being able to experience all of those things. How old were you when you first started to perform professionally?
Yeah, I'd say I was probably around as Teon Gibbs, probably about 24 when I started performing professionally as Teon Gibbs. I've been making music since I was in high school, but as professionally, like really trying to make a career out of it. Yeah, probably around 24 years old.
24. And how old are you now?
I'm 30.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So 6 years into it, what would you have told your 24-year-old self at being 30? What would you have said to that younger Teon Gibbs in terms of getting started in order to just catapult his career to the point where it is in an even shorter amount of time?
Trust your intuition about people's intentions and character towards you or your career. And I'd also say probably just make sure you shed your own ego. It's okay. It's okay to take opportunities and play some gigs that don't pay that great in order for there to be growth within your career. But you just gotta, have the right intuition about which are business things to do. And also I guess the biggest one probably be like it's okay to say no too. That's something that I feel like I really struggled with in my early to mid 20s. It's just like I was a bit of a people pleaser, and I always felt guilty when I said no. But it's okay to just tell people, no, I can't make it, or I can't do this. It doesn't make sense for me financially.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, and along with that, you also need to come to an understanding of, know, like know your limits in terms of what you can do, what you can't do, and also
Yeah,
expand your mindset to the point where you're willing to learn about how to take on new things and learn different techniques in order for you to essentially just do as much as you can with what you have.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, what were some of the things that you would say really impacted you as a rapper in terms of the rap that you do? Because the rap that you do, it seems as if it's more fusion than it is simply just, spitting bars, but it's more of a mix of like R&B, hip hop kind of with your rap interweaved with it. So how did you come to like create your own sort of how did you find your style?
I think a lot of people when they start, in the music industry, they have an artist or a couple of artists that they really love and they just kind of mimic that person. And that's just kind of where they learn their, I guess, their like cadences, and that's where they get their nuances to how they create music, is just kind of through that process. And I just think it's just like shedding that away is it takes time. So I'd say for myself, I really started finding my sound when I kind of understood, just through experimentation, just like the things that made sense for me and what was easy for me to make in the studio, especially in the 21st century, with streaming be such a big thing and like having to be consistently releasing music. I just felt as if me spending a long time really processing and thinking about every single lyric and bar meticulously was kind of taken away from the overall feeling of the songs. And I just, it was a lot quicker when it was more like R&B and funk based and groove based music. And I just kind of realized that that's kind of just becomes naturally to me. And that's kind of where the fusion started, where I was like, you know what, like, let me do what I lean into naturally, because that's going to be more accurate to who I am anyway.
Yeah. So do you freestyle often?
Yeah. Yeah. I freestyle probably every day. I'll be freestyling to beats in the car, sometimes even over other people's raps, and a lot of my process in studio is actually just freestyling, and whatever melody or lyric comes to my head, if one sticks, that's kind of what I start building the song around. So that's a part of my everyday process.
So in terms of doing that, you said whenever one sticks. So do you, whenever you get into the studio, do you just like hit record and then you just start whatever comes to mind with the beat, you just like spit it out and then whatever, as you said, sticks. That's the one that you then like take out of that session and then you apply it to your next song.
Yeah, that's a lot of it. It's like whatever musical loop or sample or beat is like has something that inspires me, I'll start just improvising on it and freestyling and just, kicking rhymes, and then whatever happens. And there's always going to be a moment in there where I'm like, oh, I can build a song around that. And that's when I start like fleshing it out.
Mm. So what was your journey? I'm curious from moving from Botswana to Vancouver.
What was the journey? So my father, he worked with helping developing countries manage their food resources. And so every 3 or 4 years, we'd have to travel and move to a different country because he'd have to be in the field. So that's kind of what happened where we were, we lived in Angola, we lived in Botswana, South Africa, England, and then eventually back here in Canada.
Yeah. Oh, so your family is originally from Canada, but at that time you guys were.
So my pops is from Canada and my mom's from Botswana, and they met in Botswana. So, like I say, come back here because I call this home now. So yeah.
Yeah. And so you started at 24. Is there a reason why you didn't start earlier in terms of education, like in college? How were you able to balance like your love of music while also having to do studies?
So I actually went to college for audio engineering. So I knew I'd be in the music industry. So I wanted to
Nice.
learn how to like make records and record and mix properly. So that's what I went to school for. And I was always making music, But like I got projects that are like sitting on the deep internet where it's like I was in rock bands or I was in like indie alternative bands playing guitar and so like there's a lot of stuff that's online that like, you know, I'll let people find one day and discover that it's me. But it just didn't feel like being in a band dynamic is something that's really rewarding, but it's also you're dealing with so many different personalities and different schedules all the time that I felt like gaining momentum was so hard. So I was like, well, I know I can be consistent in myself as an artist. And then I can for the live show, have this a band for that. But yeah, I just needed to like start being able to make executive decisions towards like how I want things to sound. And that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah. So in terms of you creating your style, and also you went to audio engineering school, which is that like that's like a perfect kind of mixed together, perfect mesh together for your music and also what you want to do. Were there any mentors you encountered during that time, or any influences rather that you would say really were important to you and that you've held on to, and like you contribute, like you say to them, like these people, they really helped me out and they really helped me to establish who I am as an artist today?
Yeah, I'd say the person that I probably gravitated towards the most. So in Western Canada, there's not like a great infrastructure for a lot of music. A lot of that's out east, actually, like in the Toronto area. So in Western Canada, there's not a whole lot. So I really gravitated towards I gravitated towards a lot of athletes because I always just drew a parallel with like hip hop music and sports where it's just like there's a certain amount of cutting edge that you need to have, and there's a like you got to have a bit of a chip on your shoulder in order to kind of motivate yourself to keep going and want it to like be the best version of yourself you can be. So my good friend Kamar Burke, he was an ex pro ball player in the Canadian Basketball League. And then he actually became a filmmaker. And that's how we connected on a music video shoot. We connected there. But he kind of understood the world of art, by making film. But obviously his background and being from Toronto and being from a lower income family, like we spoke a lot of the same language, so we could really like communicate really well. And I found a lot of support and guidance from him as far as just like work ethic and putting myself into the right rooms with people. So I leaned on him heavily, and I took a lot of guidance from him. And also, we just we built a beautiful friendship, and it's good to have people who are level headed and grounded that can just tell you when you're tripping, basically.
Mhm. Yeah, like and make yourself your own like mini cabinet of people that can advise you on, as you
Yeah,
said, if you're messing up over here, or if you need to double down on this thing over there.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. And so in terms of recording and stuff, what tools and resources would you say that were really helpful for you? It can be like microphones, or it can be like books or anything like that that really helped to hone your technique and your style.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say as far as like a more technical aspect of recording music, if you can get yourself an SM7B, I think that's a really great microphone to have because you don't really need a ton of treatment in your room. So you can kind of travel with it and keep a pretty consistent sound. So that's something I recommend for everybody. Obviously, the brightness of a condenser mic is kind of like the really what you want, and it's going to cut through your mix a lot easier, especially with hip hop. But I also found that the best thing to do is like, for all artists out there who are trying to record themselves, like, put together templates, man. Like, I think when you're already recording your song and you already have like a little bit of, compression and EQ and reverb and delay on your vocal mix already, it just kind of puts you into the vibe of the track a lot more. So I definitely think that's something I recommend. Like some people, I guess the technical way of recording is just going to be like, do it dry, do it really clean in a treated room, but that's not the reality. So, like you just got to make it do with what you have. So I recommend everyone use some kind of a template to at least record it in so that they have the kind of the general idea of what the song is going to sound like in the end. And it usually helps the performance, I find.
Mm. What's a template in terms of this case that you
So like it's really going to be like when you're singing, you're going to already have your vocal going through an EQ. So it's cleaning up a lot of like the bad frequencies in your voice. It's also going to, you can put it through a compressor in the template as well. And, that'll just kind of, control the dynamic range of it, things a little bit. And then you can add like special effects to your templates. Like some people record with auto tune on so that they, it's not going to be perfectly like in tune, but it just gives you kind of an idea of like what the record will sound like. So if I was to record exactly what we're talking like right now, it would sound just like this. But, with a template, I can choose how much reverb is on my voice. So if I want it to sound like I'm in a cave in the middle of nowhere, I have this large cavernous sound to my voice. Or if I want to just make it sound like I'm in a really, small room and there's echoes there, I can make it sound like that too. So I always recommend artists have a few template setups for the vibe of the song that they're trying to make.
And are there any template setups that you have that you've like proven to yourself that, okay, this one works for this vibe, this one works for that vibe? Do you have any in particular that you like?
Yeah, I have two go-to templates that I use. One is specifically for myself. So it has kind of like my typical presets, which are actually usually it's pretty close to actually what you hear like on the final product of my actual songs. So it makes the mixing portion of it a lot easier for the engineer because they already have a reference to go with. But then I just have like a general one that I use for other artists. And yeah, I just try to keep it pretty clean, just like, you know, reverb delay, compression, and EQ for the most part.
That's nice. And so
Yeah.
with that, what you're saying is you can then discover and find, okay, I like my voice like auto tune. I like it over here like this, and then I want it to sound like I'm like in a jazz club, and so I can make it sound like this. And okay,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
nice. Yeah. So in terms of performing, you started at age 24, 4 years in, roughly 2020, the pandemic. Uh,
Yeah.
as a performer, how did that affect you in terms of performing live? And also, was that something that you would say really, like, you had to really change some things during that time in order to perform either virtually or in other settings?
You know, in a lot of ways, it's like a hot take, but I'm really grateful for what the pandemic did for my career because I feel like it was a 2-year window. I was on an equal playing field with some of the biggest artists in the country and in the world. We all had to go through the same thing. And it really allowed me to to really just diversify and because people were still paying me for gigs, they were all virtual gigs. The budgets weren't as large as they used to be, so it really made me look at my current setup and it gave me the opportunity to minimize it so that I had you know I can make my own, but I could just go with what's needed for the performance to make the performance good as opposed to just doing it with friends and fam because prior to that, I was a lot of like, I want to just build with the people who supported me. So it really gave me a chance to like actually just like take register and be like, yo, like how do I, continue to like make money from gigs? And I had to like downsize my setup. And I got a really great response from it. So it was like coming out of the pandemic when normal gigs were opening up again, I was like, well, let's just keep that downsized setup. We can all make a little bit more money this way. And I can fund, other projects.
Yeah. Speaking of other projects, 100 Collective.
Mhm.
When did you start that record label, and how's it going so far?
So the idea was birthed. I did a showcase at Canadian Music Week in Toronto in June, and we're meeting with Tiny Kingdom, who is another record label, independent record label in Vancouver/Toronto. And I also they met with Lisa from the Orchard, and the idea was like just talking about this community that I've been building with 100 Collective, because we've been doing a lot of artist showcases over the years, putting people into rooms where, they can perform, and it leads them to, meeting publishers or meeting, labels that can sign them, or management companies. And then also like doing like digital profiles and building like TikTok content, real content, and that kind of stuff for artists, a lot of agency work. And there's been a community that's really been developed around that. And people were just like, well, take your community one step further. Like, like if you can allow those people who are already coming to you to, perform at your events, the opportunity to now release music through you because you're a trusted partner and you're in the same city as them, they're going to lean more into that. And it just made sense to me. And it's always something that I wanted to do. So we kind of set it up in a way where Tiny Kingdom does a lot of the administration and manages the actual label side of things. And it allows my team at 100 Collective to focus on the branding and the right artists that are going to be able to release music through our platform. And so we have, just done our first release. We have a second one scheduled for November here. And we have a lot of music scheduled for the new year here with a lot of different artists. We're currently just like, ironing out the paperwork with people, making sure that everyone is getting what they need and going to be supported correctly. And we want to do things that are very artist friendly. So, you know, we're not, if we're signing you to the label, it's, a lot more leaning on the licensing side of things as opposed to a more traditional record deal. And we want a lot of more like single distributions, and like putting your singles into like packages. So you can do three singles with us or five singles with us. And we look at the performance with that, and we reassess after that to see what we can do next to continue to grow not only the 100 Collective brand, but the artist brand, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah. How many artists have you gotten already?
Right now, we're slated to have 3 artists that are going to be releasing with us next year, uh,
Nice.
plus myself. There could be more, but I personally, I feel like people who are going to be kind of as part of the 100 Collective brand, I want to keep it a pretty small number so that we can give everyone the attention they deserve. But as far as opening things up for distribution, someone wants to come and they want to do an actual, just a single with us, then, they can approach us, and we can hash that one out. But I want that to be more open to the community. If you make, good hip hop or R&B music, you should be able to approach us and we can help you with distribution. But, yeah, only a small handful of artists that I want to actually call our artists.
Yeah. And so how do you do because I'm sure if you're going to be starting a record, you're going to have a lot of people who want to be a part of that. And so how do you figure out which artists are the artists you want to be on your label?
I think a lot of it comes down to the artist, like consistency, and like how developed their brand is. I really want to see a strong work ethic with artists. Obviously, like, the music comes first, but and there's a million artists out there who are extremely talented. But if you're talented and you have, a strong work ethic, that's someone that we can work with, because in any dynamic, the driving force behind any brand is going to be the artist. Like, for my own personal career, I've had managers that have, has been a lip service manager where I felt like I was working a lot harder than them. But then I've also had, situations where someone kind of, I guess, matched my energy, to use like a trendy term. And that's when you build a really, really healthy working relationship with people, is when both people are able to work very hard. And that's when you see the careers blossom. So that's a big thing that we look for in artists, people who make dope music, who work really hard and are willing to take risks, like I really want artistically gratifying records that are, we're all in support of and we all really believe in because playing the streaming game is a game that will always be there. And of course, we're not gonna dismiss the importance of it, but it's like for you to make a great record, like we know how to get like we know that that'll translate well to live music. We know that that'll translate well and it'll last a long time as opposed to, a 2 to 3 months shelf life.
And so is the name 100 Collective because it's specifically going to be 100 people?
No, 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 no. 100 Collective, it's just the number 100 has always been something that's resonated with me. It's kind of how I've like, I guess, lived my life to a degree. It's just like giving everything 100 and going all in. And collective is just honestly, it was just a cool word, like it just sounded good.
Yeah, that's really neat. So in terms of signing up new artists, you're looking for, you said it's consistency and work ethic. And are these artists that are native to Vancouver who are BIPOC artists?
Yeah, I mean, my heart is for BIPOC artists. I really want to champion the BIPOC community. Find a lot of it is like, if you make good music and you're a BIPOC artist, you kind of usually have to leave Vancouver. But with the situation we're trying to set up, it's like, yo, you can stay here and we could be that conduit to help you further your career without having to leave the city. So that's really, yeah, that's really my heart. Obviously, as a the black man living in Vancouver, there's being so little representation. It's like, all right, okay, well, let me be that little piece of infrastructure then. And I always joke around. I say like it's almost like we're buying back the block. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the end of the day, a lot of this music is black music. And it's like we should have ownership of that in some way.
Yeah. And I listened to, I think it was an interview that you did. One of the two things that you said that an artist should do is they should stay true to themselves and they should also have a sense of ownership of their product. What do those two things, those two concepts, what do they mean to you personally as an artist?
I think sincerity and authenticity in not only your music, but just in your life will only increase your capacity to have long lasting relationships and a long lasting career. When you are who you are and you know how to present that self and articulate yourself well on a song, people gravitate towards that and they will follow your journey and they'll feel like they're growing up with you. I look at an artist like J. Cole, who's been one of my favorite artists for the last 10 years. I almost feel like he's like an older brother to me because I've just seen his journey over the years and he documents it so well. And that's who he is, like some people like, they're really in the streets and they're really about that life and that's what they want to talk about. As long as it's true to who you are as a person, people will be able to connect with it or you'll allow them to enter into your world. So I just feel like that's so important just to be who you are as an artist and stay true to yourself and don't let the noise of social media and comparison like take away from your trajectory. You know what I'm saying? Like don't let trendy sounds be the things that changes you if that's not actually what you enjoy making. And and ownership, I feel like too quickly artists are, even if they do well, they too quickly give away things. I think take your time with it, like really make a plan, like own as much as your content as possible, especially in the digital age now. There's so much opportunity for different kinds of like sync placement or even performance opportunities where if you're giving that money away, I don't know if that really makes sense.
Yeah. And also, as you said, digitally, even with like the emergence of NFTs and all of that stuff, like everything that you make has the potential for just to like pop off and do extremely well. And so you want to make sure that you have a say in how it's used, how people view it, and in the context in which it's put into, because it's some of those things. It's usually like music or art where it's put into a certain context and it's viewed as either it's good or bad. And so in terms whenever you have control of your art, of your music especially, whenever it's used, you then control how it gets used,
Mhm.
and you can really control the narrative in terms of who you are as an artist and the way that you perceive the world through your music and through your art.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, like that term control is is really big. That's a really key word that you said there. I feel like having control of your own career and being able to have ownership and carry that responsibility is huge. There is a downside to that as well. Obviously, if you go left, you have to take ownership of that as well. But I do feel as if like that's better than following a blueprint given to you by someone in a suit who doesn't really actually care about you as a person. They just see you as a number, and they want to just capitalize off of that. But hey, that's what happens when you live in a capitalist society too.
When was the time, like, is there a specific event that you would say that caused you to view yourself as an artist? Like, did you wake up one morning, one day go brush your teeth, look at yourself in the mirror and said, I'm Teon Gibbs and I'm an artist? Was it something like that, or was it just over time you had this slow kind of revealing of who you were as an artist?
Mm, I think I've kind of always viewed myself as an artist, and I feel like the first moment I knew that I was an artist, I performed the show at a festival in a small city called Kelowna in British Columbia here in Canada. And there's a festival called Center of Gravity, and I performed for a really, it was like the first act of the day. The festival is going to hold like 15,000 people, but there's maybe like three or 400 people at the festival site. And I performed, and I remember I had such a crazy, palpable feeling of like connection with those 400 people, and they were all engaged. They're at the front watching me perform, and I knew in that moment that like, yo, this is really, really like what I want to do, what I meant to do. I knew that about myself, and I guess over time, I just had the self awareness to like understand that. I think a few years later, everyone around me, even my family, even my coworkers, when I still had a day job, they looked at me as an artist. That's kind of when I knew that. Yeah, that's like probably by the 2020s when I knew that the world kind of was like seeing me as an artist. That's how I present first. So yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of your career, have there been some instances where you encountered like a failure that was so extreme that it made you consider wanting to stop? Have you ever had an experience like that so far?
Oh man, that happens all the time, man. I feel like as an artist, you know what I'm saying? An artist or entrepreneur, anything that's like it's like I said, man, you gotta have so much mental fortitude because I hate to put it in just like these layman's terms, but when you make art and you release that art, when numbers become a part of it, it's really easy to associate those numbers with the quality of your art or, how good you are. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a lot of it becomes kind of like an acceptance thing. And it's gonna be really, really demotivating and really heartbreaking when something you care about and invest so much time into doesn't do well. So, if I've had some releases over the years that I was like, yo, man, like no one loved this, no one cared about this. And it really was like heartbreaking for me. And I've had the couple shows where you're booked for a room and like again, like I said earlier, like in Western Canada, like the population of black people is not a whole lot. So sometimes I go into these rooms and I'm the only black person in the room performing all these songs. And like everybody wants to hear, you know, Kenny Chesney or some country artist like that. And then I'm here rapping my ass off and people look at me like I'm a psycho. And that can be really demotivating. But, it's almost like I needed someone a couple years ahead of me who was doing the exact same thing as me to just be like, yo, don't sweat that. Like you already knew what it was when you walked in the room. Don't sweat those releases. People will enjoy those songs at the shows. Like I needed that kind of wisdom and I had to learn that myself through trial and error. So, me thinking about quitting, it happened a lot, man. So any artist listening to this, I'm sure you can relate, but you just gotta maintain the motivation and be able to separate yourself as who you are and your self-worth from a number attached to a song.
And so for people that want to get started in the music industry in particular, are there some things that you would suggest that they do mentally to prepare themselves for the different challenges that they will encounter and the eventual failures as well as resounding triumphs as well? Because it's the highs are highs and the lows are low, and you don't really want to have that up and down experience. You want it to be kind of level. You want to find a balance between those two. Do you have any advice in terms of just building up mental fortitude as an
Uh,
artist?
I think it's constantly checking yourself or having people around you that can check you and remind you of the game plan and where you're going, keep you level headed. I think that's really important to have people that you can like lean into. I'd also recommend people just set goals for yourselves, man. Like I just like every artist, they just talk about, yo, man, I'm gonna play Coachella in 2 years. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, how are you gonna get there though? Like set goals for yourself so that you're able to see a roadmap, and if you're ahead of schedule, great, set new goals, like, adjust consistently. But you can't just, expect to put out a song and think it's gonna go viral. That's not a sustainable business plan. You can't go to a bank with that. You can't do anything like that. You have to have an actual like a game plan for yourself. So I think that's really important and stick to your plan. You have to pivot every now and then, but all in all, stick to your plan. And yeah, I just think realistic goals is such an important thing for new up and coming artists.
Yeah. And so, in terms of your next steps, you just got off tour and you are doing this 100 collectives, getting your record label started. What's next for you in terms of your next stage as an artist?
My next stage as an artist is to continue to be you know, someone waving the flag of culture, of Black culture for Black music in Canada, especially in Western Canada. Working on an album right now. I've been working on this album for about a year now, so I'm really, really happy with the direction of where it's going, and I'm gonna be putting that out in 23, uh, and making sure that I have access to the right amount of funding and that I'm booked next year so that I can really market this project very well. And that's my current artist game plan is just, I've played about 60 shows this year and I was very intentional. It's going to be probably 70 by the time the year is over. And I was very, very, very intentional with wanting the method to be very booked so that next year, I can pick that number down by 20 or 30, but I can, start asking for a little bit more money for these shows so that I have a bit more free time to be able to make sure that 100 Collective Records and the artists that I'm working with have proper teams around them and that I'm able to oversee it correctly.
It sounds like music is really like an integral part of your life.
Yeah.
But is there anything that you do in terms of, apart from music, like any hobbies that you have that you would say that either help you to either get away from the music stuff for a bit, or does it even like recharge your batteries in that way? Do you have any hobbies, any interests that you have that you do?
Yeah. I think as far as hobbies, like, I I think I'll say the hobby that's probably the most therapeutic for me and my mental health is walking. Honestly, as boring as that sounds, like I I try to start my day off with, like like a a 3 mile walk every morning so that I'm able to just like collect my thoughts or my feelings from, you know, what's going on in my life at that moment. And I probably look crazy to people because I have my AirPods in and I'm just like talking to myself. But yeah, I find like just like speaking out my issues and thinking about my thought processes is very therapeutic for me and it keeps me balanced. Outside of that, man, I got dogs, so I'm with them a lot. That's my hobby.
Yeah, playing with the dogs. What kind of dogs?
Doberman.
Nice,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, my brother he lives in LA and he does it is hiking and
Yeah.
he hikes up Runyon Canyon every I think every day. That's what he does.
Wow.
And same thing for him in terms of like thinking about things because he's in a pretty creative space. And what he does is, yeah, he goes on his hikes. He usually has, yeah, his AirPods in and listening either to like audiobooks or to some music and just trying to get the juices flowing in that way in terms of figuring out next steps and new things. And so, yeah, walking really is like it's the simplest yet most powerful thing in a way that a person can do in
Yeah.
order just to just help the mind out and let it get those gears turning and
Yeah.
understanding new things, whether it be, as you said, just talking things out internally that you have, or even synthesizing things that you need to do, like for your job or anything like that, anything at all.
Yeah.
Taking it like a good long walk really puts things into perspective and it also shows you things about yourself and about the environment that you never would have necessarily realized if it wasn't for that walk.
Yeah. No, it's like it allows you to really like process. I think it's a really great tool for processing.
Yeah. Well, Teon, this has been a wonderful conversation. Where can people go to learn more about 100 Collective, about your new upcoming album, and all your previous works?
Yeah. To learn more about 100 Collective, just go to our website, 100collective.ca. We're really active on Instagram and TikTok at the 100 Collective, and that's the number 100. And then just follow me on Instagram at Teon Gibbs 100. The biggest thing that people can do for any artist is follow them on Spotify. By following someone on Spotify, that just ups their chance of every release they do being more successful. So yeah, so if y'all could follow me on Spotify, that would be the number one thing I would say. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. And have there been any black influences in terms of your music career, either in music itself or in any other aspect of your life?
Well, yo, I mean, so Kamar Burke, the person I was saying, I kind of viewed as a mentor. Obviously he's a black man. Being from Botswana originally, finishing high school in Botswana before coming to Canada, a lot of my influences musically, they come from obviously black artists in the continent of Africa. So, whether I'm listening to Brenda Fassie or DJ Cleo or DJ Smooth, those are huge influences. And I just always had black music in my life. It's songwriters like Tracy Chapman all the way to, Drake, like it's just like, yeah, that's just black music has really just been a huge influence on me as a human being.
That's wonderful, Tion. I have one more question for you, and
Yeah.
that is if you had the ability to send a worldwide text, what would your message be?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I think my message would be, I was gonna do some shameless plug, but I don't know if I really do that. I'd probably like,
Yeah.
I'd probably just be like, yo, man. I'd be like, yo, yeah. I'd probably just say something encouraging, man. Honestly, like, yo, just, s- you know, s- keep your composure. Oh no, you know what I'd say? I'd say, you know, keep your intentions pure. It'll all work out. That's what I would say.
Why would that be your message?
I feel like if people can have the objectivity and the self-awareness to remove themselves from a lot of tough situations and emotional situations or situations that may be political or bring them pain, they can just have pure intentions. I think people can proceed with their life and understand that, like, like, if I just do the best that I can and be the best person that I can, like, things will in general work out. Obviously, there's outliers with that, but I just think anyone who's really in a tough spot in their life, that's probably something that they need to hear, you know?
Yeah, and also with that, you need to have an understanding of like your place and who you are and what you can do and what you cannot do. And
Yeah.
then also just be open to learning new things and having things that you learn interweave with the things that you know and let your intelligence and grow from there and apply it in so many different ways.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Definitely, definitely. Well, Tion, thank you so much for your time and thank you for this interview.
You
Yeah, anywhere people can go to learn more. You said collective on Instagram, and Tian want to
Yeah,
put it on Instagram, TikTok. Okay.
yeah, Teon Gibbs 100. That's blessed.
Okay. Well, awesome, Tian. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye.